the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
That would be fun. Exercise the demons. Is that the only way to wear the black versus Alabama? Is that the only way to get them back?
It's possible. Never say never, Matt Green.
No, that's not happening. I'm not gonna get my hopes up for that.
Never.
I'm not even sure I want that as much as I want black jerseys.
That would be good. Bring them back. What do you mean? They look good.
Because then if they lost to Alabama again, do you realize how
it's not the
terrible
black
that would
jersey's
be?
fault, Matt Green. Let me go ahead and
I know it's not the jersey's fault, but we're talking to the crazies out there that think the jerseys are the reason they won. And we need to stop all this, what do they call them, fake juice, I think is what they called them on the message boards. It's like we saw what Saban's Bama program was, saw what Mark Richt's Georgia program was. Like that's the reason for the result and nothing else.
Yeah. Matt Green, on the flip side here, Tennessee side of things, I went back and forth in this question because I think there's a strong argument for Georgia. And I think if you polled Tennessee fans, which home game are they most amped for? It's probably Georgia. And part of it, I think, is you get them, like, it's circumstantial, right? Where I think getting Georgia in week 3 is just new. We haven't had this in a long time here. Georgia is breaking in a new quarterback. They're breaking in new starters at wide receiver, on the offensive line. That we'll see what they look like at edge. There's not that Jalen Carter inside, even though Elijah Griffin just got compared to the next Jalen Carter.
He did. Warren Brinson called him the next Jalen Carter.
And he very well might be, but Jalen Carter was not the Jalen Carter we saw year 1 and year 3 at Georgia. Still took some time.
As a true freshman, that dude was a baller.
I'm just saying. I recall Jalen Carter,
Devontae Wyatt, and Trayvon
he
Walker
was
playing.
wrecking Tennessee his 3rd year, and that's
Absolutely.
when he became like a top. Like, I don't know. I just like doesn't mean he's not gonna be. It's just that's putting a lot on a true
He
freshman.
was a dude from day one, though. He came into a crowded room, so Elijah Griffin won't have the same guys in front of him. So if he's as good, he'll play a lot more than Jalen Carter did.
Yeah.
But I'm not, like I said before, I'm not putting that on anybody. Like, I think he might be the best D lineman that ever plays at Georgia. So I'm not even going to compare anyone to Jalen Carter until I see it.
Yeah. Questions at corner, I think it's fair to say, for Georgia going to this. So it just feels like this is the most gettable. And when I say gettable, I'm putting it like in air quotes because Tennessee has not scored in the second half against Georgia the last 2 times. But I will say, if you go back and watch, I've watched Georgia-Tennessee probably 3 times since that game happened. Tennessee played Georgia strong, especially in the first half. I think 2024 was the best they played Georgia in the Heupel Kirby era. Here,
what was the halftime score?
What Tennessee had 17, right?
Was it tie? Yeah, was it 17-17 at half?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it was a battle. Like, it felt like that game was just you worried about Tennessee's inability to put a body on Carson Beck. He had a lot of time in the pocket, and you're like, that can continue if Tennessee's going to pull out a victory here. But we don't have to rehash that game. Ultimately, what I'm saying is I think there are reasons for optimism if you are looking at this game in week 3 and the placement that it's happening, where Tennessee will be at year 3 with Nico. And Heupel has only lost 1 home game in the last 3 years, and it was against Georgia 2 years ago. And I can understand that you're like, I don't want to get my hopes up too much that this is going to be different in year 5. But I do think Tennessee will still have a top 10 to 12 scoring defense again next year. I think Tennessee will be undefeated coming into this game. I think this is a good college game day potential for this game. I think it is going to be, because part of what was different 2 years ago when Georgia last came to Knoxville, there wasn't a lot of juice coming into that game. Like, it was a pretty miserable year offensively, and Joe Milton had a rough year, and it was just not, you didn't really think Tennessee had a shot. But going into week 3,
they were still playing for something, right? It was only like a 2-loss team, I want to say, like late in the season, right?
3.
And then, I mean, obviously they broke that touchdown the first play of the game. So there's definitely juice after that.
I mean, it got ugly in a hurry. Like, that game got.
I mean, that was definitely, it was like 59 minutes of like domination basically after that opening.
I was going to say, like, you're being generous here with how you're viewing this. But remember, the week prior, Mizzou blew out Tennessee 36-7. And that was another miserable game. So it was coming in with low vibes.
Cody Schrader going off.
Yeah. So it was not like the vibes were low going into that game. This game will be 2 undefeated teams. And I just think the vibes will be as strong in Tennessee's favor as they've been in this series to this point. Now, vibes don't win games, Matt Green. But I will say, Nealon is rocking. Nealon will be amped. Fans will be at full belief mode for this game. I wonder if they check her Nealon for this one. But I think this is going to be the loudest, the most intense Tennessee-Georgia game in a long time, because I think there is real belief. I mean, Nico, we'll see what kind of jump he makes. We'll see. There's a lot of optimism about the offensive line being better than a year ago. I think the receivers are intriguing. You got the two number one players at receiver on the Vols roster who came out of the state of Georgia, who chose Tennessee over the home state, and Mike Matthews and Travis Smith Jr. I think like I said, the defense should be really good. I think it's going to be a competitive, high stakes game that you're getting Georgia at the right time, because I don't think and we've talked about this all summer. It's like, or all offseason, Georgia has real questions on the offense. Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how Gunnar Stockton's going to play. We don't know how all these new receivers are going to acclimate. Georgia had a bad offensive line down the stretch last year. How does that look with some new faces? Does it get better? Does it get worse? I think those are all real interesting questions. It doesn't mean it's all going to happen and it's not going to go well for Georgia. It just means that it's out there and that there is reasons to believe that this game will be competitive going into the fourth quarter for the first time in this series. I think that's very much in play based on the circumstances for both teams and just where it falls in the calendar. So if you're a Tennessee fan and you say that the answer is Georgia in terms of what game you're looking forward to, I can understand that. For me, though, I think it's
got to be, before you move on, I think it's got to be Georgia. And also the last time you beat Georgia at home was 2015, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's a grace that Reggie Davis dropped that 40, 50-yard touchdown. Best game of Reggie Davis's career. But he dropped the one at the end.
Crompton blew him out too in 2009.
Say that again?
Crompton and company blew him out in 2009. I think that was Georgia. Did they return the opening kick for that game too? It's kind of funny we talk about that.
Boykin definitely, I don't know if it was the opening kick, but he definitely returned a kick for a touchdown in that game. The Lane Kiffin year. Yeah, that was a blowout for sure. So are those the only two? Lane Kiffin, and then because the overtime one was 2013 that Georgia ended up winning. 2015, that was with Grayson Lambert and Georgia lost. 2011 would have been Georgia won that one too. That I was at the 2011 game. Actually, Isaiah Crowell's freshman year. So so
Tennessee won in 15, 2009, 2007 in Knoxville, and then
2007 was an absolute beatdown too. I think Georgia scored like a touchdown late to make it like 35-14 or something like that. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think D'Amico Goodman had like an amazing it was like an amazing play, like one-handed catch. It was like the tightest plays ever made, but it was like a 35-7 game, so no one really cared.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. But I will say, the one I think is going to be most... I mean, do you remember how loud it got and how crazy Oklahoma, Tennessee was with Baker Mayfield coming to town? And that was unbelievable in terms of like just how intense and loud and what that atmosphere was like. It's going to depend on where Oklahoma's at coming into this game. Like, they're a huge boom or bust team this year, obviously. No pun there with boom or bust. But John Mateer, if he's like a Heisman type guy and he has a Cam Ward like impact at Oklahoma, and obviously with the history of Heupel and Oklahoma, now Seth Littrell, the OC that they fired, who's been a teammate and close friend of Heupel for 25 years. He's now an analyst at Tennessee on off. There's just so much overlap between the two programs that if Oklahoma's good coming into Knoxville for that game, I think the atmosphere for that one might be the craziest of the year, because I think fans really are going to go to bat for Heupel. They loved Heupel getting that win in Norman last year. Like, that meant a lot to fans here locally, and I think they're going to back him up big time for that game. And I just think there's going to be a lot of emotion in Tennessee, Oklahoma when they come to town. And if it's a big time matchup because Oklahoma takes care of business, there's a chance that is the number one home game for Tennessee this year, is depending on what Oklahoma does with their side of things, because I think there's potential for all the recipe of a really fun type environment and type game.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. It feels like Heupel going to Oklahoma is just a bigger storyline than Oklahoma coming to Tennessee. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little history now here with Oklahoma and Tennessee. But I don't think just because, like we were saying with Georgia, like the where it falls on the schedule and everything, just like what that's gonna do to Tennessee's schedule. If they beat Georgia week 3, it's gonna feel like, okay, we're going undefeated this year. If you're a Tennessee fan, like maybe it's like Alabama in 2022, and it's like, unfortunately, the year you beat Alabama, they weren't the best team out there. And so maybe Georgia is a down year of Georgia, and you beat Georgia, and they turn out to be like a 3-loss team or something. But I think just what it's gonna do vibes wise, it's Heupel's first win over Kirby. I think there's nothing that compares to that. Like if Oklahoma turns out to be, one of the best games, that might not be a good thing. You know what I mean? Because Oklahoma, they could be a surprise team. But I mean, they're probably going to be like preseason 10th, 12th or something coming into this conference this year. It's not necessarily, they're not necessarily supposed to be on Tennessee's level coming into 2025.
That's fair. I'm excited for both, but I will say that I agree with you that the answer right now is Georgia. But I mean, they're like, think about this too. Heupel and Luttrell were both fired as offensive coordinators at their alma mater. Luttrell this past offseason at Oklahoma, and Heupel years ago under Stoops. So both have been fired by the place they won a national championship at, and they're coming to Knoxville. Like I could just see,
yeah.
Like there's a revenge angle there. So I just think there's a lot there. I'll just say it's gonna be.
What about Sam Pittman in Arkansas coming to town? Are they circling that one for the revenge?
I think that's kind of like. Did you ever watch Mad Men?
I've watched some of it.
Do you remember the scene with the guy from Superstar? Is his name? I forgot his name. In the show.
The young guy.
Yeah. Where he gets on the elevator with Don, and he says something to him, and Don's like, "I don't even think about you at all." Where he said, "Oh yeah," he says, "I feel sorry for you," and he's like, "I don't think about you at all." That's how it is with Tennessee, Arkansas, where it's like, "Oh, big win, they beat." It's like they went to the playoff anyway, and it's just like you're competing for 6 and 7.
Yeah, that would have been like their that was their second loss. I mean, it's their first loss, but like the Georgia one is the number 1 loss, kind of. So like that's the second loss that theoretically should have ruined your season.
But it
didn't really prevent Tennessee from doing anything, but it's still not a great not a great look though, and especially when you think about Heupel's, it kind of adds to Heupel's history of, road troubles.
I will lock in Tennessee beats Arkansas at home. Let's just go ahead and lock.
Who are the biggest road games? Do you have the schedule pulled up in front of you? Because I mean, that's where you got to worry about Heupel, especially like if they get off to like a 3-0 start, maybe they start, feeling themselves a little bit. They beat Georgia, let their guard down with one of these road games, because you got to worry about Heupel's teams going on the road at this point.
I mean, if they beat Georgia, they're in the playoff. Like it's
Alabama, and Florida, those both on the road.
Yeah, I mean that's it. Like you get Vanderbilt at home, Oklahoma at home. You have that neutral site against Syracuse to open, but you get Arkansas at home. You got to go to Mississippi State.
Sleeping on Cuse. You're sleeping on Fran Brown and company.
I would be a lot more worrisome if Kyle McCord was back. I think that's more of an intriguing game.
I don't think I realized Kyle McCord wasn't back.
Yeah, he's
not back.
No, he's in the NFL draft, man. He might be QB3.
What?
He took advantage, man. He had to go like he is going to go higher because of how bad this group is. Seems like he probably had as good of a year as he's ever going to have. I was going to say it's hard to top what he just did at Syracuse this past year. I like the odds of him being able to run that back.
Imagine saying that in the same season where a guy had a game where he threw 3 pick sixes in one game. I think he threw 5 picks versus Pittsburgh this year. Yeah, brutal. But hey, go get your money, Kyle McCord.
It's a rare double win though. Kyle McCord left and balled out at Syracuse, and Ohio State lost Kyle McCord and won a national title with Will Howard. So it's like both benefited from the breakup.
There you
go. Matt's Minute.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.